Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today, we're going to take you on an adventure with Bantustan by author Lazar Pascanovic. Thank you for joining us from China by Skype.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, you need to give us a little background. This book covers an adventure going through Africa with three young men. So you're one of those young men. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the other two authors of this book.
Well, at the time of that journey, I was a somewhat younger young man because it took place around 10 years ago. And it's just like me and my two friends, we had an idea that we should just travel somewhere. I guess we were a little bit bored, and you know how it is. And then we were thinking, where can we travel to make it like really interesting and exciting? And because we were living in Serbia at the time, actually it wasn't that hard to reach Africa over land. There are just several countries between. Right now, the situation is much more difficult because of the war in Syria, but back then it was very safe and very easy to go there. So yeah, that's how we decided to go, and we wanted to find out something about this part of the world that we knew almost nothing about. I guess that was also part of our motivation for going there.
Well, what was the landscape like in Serbia, when you left?
It was snowing. It was early December, and that was the day of the first snow, actually, just when we were leaving. So as we were passing through Serbia and Bulgaria, it was snowing, and then we reached Turkey, where it was already a bit warmer. There was no snow, and the temperature was a bit higher. And then in Syria, it was already quite hot. And then came Jordan and Egypt, where we actually swam in the sea, even though it was December.
That must have been a great part of the adventure. What was the political landscape like in Serbia when you left?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Actually, because of the complicated political situation in the Balkans, especially in these ex-Yugoslav countries, right after the wars and the collapse, we basically needed visas to go everywhere. We couldn't go anywhere in Europe. And it was that year, it's, if I'm not mistaken, 2009, December 2009, when they lifted visas for us, so we could finally travel around Europe. We were actually already at the beginning of our trip when we found out. So actually one of the reasons why we traveled to the Middle East and why I went there so many times was that for a long time during my youth, it was the only part of the world where we could go visa-free.
Oh, that's good. But you ran into complications along the way with visas. Give us...
Yeah, it's a part of being from Serbia, yeah.
So give us an example. Tell us about one of the border crossings that you describe in the book that was really complicated to get through.
Well, I think the one maybe between... the one when we were entering Zambia from Tanzania. Because, you know, Serbia was a part of a larger country called Yugoslavia for a long time. And then after it collapsed in the 90s, the country kept the name. It was like Rump Yugoslavia, just Serbia and Montenegro. And then it changed its name to Serbia and Montenegro and finally to Serbia. So our passports kept changing. And the name of the country on our passports, every time we would get a new passport, it said another country. And many border crossings in the world, they're not updated so regularly in this. So they see a passport, it says Serbia, and they're like, what is this? This country doesn't exist. Or like, where is this? We don't have it in our computer. And also the visa regime was different from Yugoslavia, which was like an open country. We could travel to so many places without any visas, and for Serbia. So we were trying to, like at that border crossing entering Zambia, we were trying to convince the policeman that we are actually from Yugoslavia, so he would let us in. But he didn't fall for it. However, a couple of days later, our friend who entered the country at a different crossing successfully just said Yugoslavia, and they just waved him through, and he entered the country without paying anything. So it's just luck.
What was the biggest struggle? So all of you are friends, but you only knew each other from online. Is that correct? Or did you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So you all met up, and how did all your different backgrounds, coming from the same country, but your different backgrounds, perceptions, idealism, how did that affect your friendship as you were moving along on this trip, and how long did it take?
Well, I think, sometimes people ask me, so why would you go on such a trip with two guys you don't know, right? And my answer is always, because nobody else wanted to go. So, it's actually very difficult to find travel companion for such an adventure, travel companions. So you ask on a forum and some guys say, yeah, I want to go. And you're so happy that you don't even question it. Well, it was pretty good. There was a lot of dynamic between us because we had different interests and ways of traveling and preferences and needs. Somebody wants to slow down. Somebody wants to see some historical place or something. So there were a lot of conflicts. But you know what? These conflicts were actually very useful when we started writing the book, because they gave this dramatic tension to the book.
Definitely. Which is why, even though nobody will travel to the places I want to go, I go by myself.
Yeah, I do that sometimes too.
So tell me about the places that you stayed. You stayed with a lot of people who hosted you in their private homes along the way, couch surfing in some places. So how did all that come about? And did you sustain any of the relationships that you made along the way?
Well, that came about because it was all part of our plan, right? Because usually when people travel, if they just stay at hotels and then they go to, a safari park, for example, in Africa, they really don't get in touch with the reality of the country they're visiting. They're just getting in touch with this tourist infrastructure, right? You don't take a peek behind the scenes. You arrive to the airport, and then a shuttle bus takes you to your hotel, and then a jeep takes you to a bungalow in a park, and so on. So we didn't go on any safaris, and we didn't check out any tourist attractions. We just wanted to talk to people. And it turned out that couch surfing at the time was very big in Africa. And most people who live in slums, they don't have computers at home, but there is always like a small cyber cafe with a couple of very old computers, and they use that to register on couch surfing. So that was very interesting. We really enjoyed it. People were very welcoming and hospitable there.
So what was it like learning about the culture? You came from a war-torn country to a country that had a lot of its own problems. Did that help you determine where you were going to go in the future, or feel better about what you left behind?
Yeah, I think you've got a point there. because after several months in Africa, when I got back to Serbia, I was looking around and I started thinking, this place is not so bad, you know, like there is electricity everywhere and running water, and the streets are very safe anytime, day and night. You know, in many African countries, it's not really advisable to even go out for a walk in the evening. So it was, in that respect, I would agree with you. Well, I think this shared background that we from the Balkans region have with Africa actually helped us relate to them much more efficiently, because basically most of the Balkan countries were colonies of the Ottoman Empire, some of them up until the early 20th century. So we also have these problems of national borders being set in the places where they maybe divide one nation into two countries and so on. And also there's so many problems with the languages and how we define our language, right? Because Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro, they all speak the same language, but everyone has a different name for it. And it's an ongoing debate. So it's so often in African countries, because it's like a political identity is tied to the language people speak. So I think that really helped us a lot. And there was another thing, and this is that people mostly treated us as white people, basically as let's say, the descendants of the people who colonized them. So we always tried, at first we were trying to explain to them, like, there is Western Europe and there is Eastern Europe, and it's not really the same. It's very, very different. So we were a colony, and now our country is basically very similar to yours. We just got out of a war 10 years ago. But I think most of them didn't really believe us. They were like, yeah, Europe, you guys are all rich. You're just saying that, but we know.
I know. Isn't the misconception about where you're from drive you crazy as you're traveling? Because you're really trying to convince people about what we're really like. So what was the biggest thing that you learned from it, your experience there?
Well, it might sound like a cliche, but I think my biggest takeaway was that people aren't really so different. When you take away this layer of the so-called exotic, maybe the nature is different and the architecture and different languages and whatnot. But essentially, when you were reading the book, you must have noticed that the problems that people talk about and their dreams and hopes for the future, they're all universal human problems.
Yes, you guys did a great job with that, just showing what people are like everywhere. So I was really impressed with the way you guys wrote it. The fact that you split up once during the trip and each did your own thing, but most of the time you came back together, even with all the aggravations and idiosyncrasies of different people's personalities and driving you crazy. I thought you guys did a great job explaining the adventure. And it was truly a wonderful adventure. You met so many different people and so many mishaps along the way. How did you guys handle all of that? Did you learn to relax and just let things go?
Yeah, I guess we did become a bit more relaxed. At first, we started this as an adventure without thinking much about any of the complexities of what we were really getting into. So, but as the journey went on and as we were facing some things that were quite unpleasant and having many difficult conversations with the people there and finding out about their lives, I think it took a toll on us. So we were getting more and more tired. And also the trip was quite hard because the roads are not so good, and the infrastructure generally, and this thing about being a white person in Africa and attracting a lot of unwanted attention. Just people always yelling at you at the street, asking for money, wanting something, wanting this or that. So at first you don't really care, but maybe after 1 month you start to lose your immunity to all that.
How many months did the trip take together?
It took exactly 3 months.
3 months? Wow. What about your families? You guys were in your early 20s. Weren't they worried about you?
They were quite worried. Yes. So we had to keep checking in regularly and send them, photos of us smiling in some interesting places and so on. And I think that was one of the biggest problems while planning and preparing for the trip. It was easy for us to prepare ourselves, but to prepare our mothers, that wasn't so easy. It took a lot of convincing and explaining that Africa is actually not what people think it is. Because if you think about it, most places there are quite normal. Kids go to school, people go to work every morning. It's not like one big war zone or something like that. If you avoid the dangerous parts, it's quite okay.
And all of you decided to blog about it, and you got a great response. And you guys were really good about being really truthful in your blog posts. Did that surprise you along the way that so many people started getting interested in your trip and looking forward to your post?
Yeah, it was quite unexpected. I think it was also because not many people from our country actually travel, and especially in that way. People will go somewhere with an agency. Usually they go to Greece, to the seaside. But something like this, I think most of our friends thought we were crazy for doing this. But this is where the appeal was, I guess. They really wanted to. They followed it regularly because they wanted to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and there were so many problems along the way that you were, crossing your fingers as you read the book, hoping you guys would make it out of each successive jam that you got into. The story with the buses and an accident that happened.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
The tourist destination that you went to that wanted you guys to stay and help build it. All these different experiences were amazing. So, as you guys left the country, do you think it's something that young people should do? How did it prepare you for your future and your careers?
Well, it definitely helps you put things into perspective. Because we don't really know much about the world, if you think about it. Like an average person who spends most of his life in his country or her country or hometown, everything we know about the world comes from the media, basically. So I'm convinced that many people believe that Africa is mostly just this big grass fields and beautiful wild animals and sunsets and so on, because this is what we see. However, there is more than 1 billion people living there in almost 50 countries with different cultures and languages. And I think that is one thing. So it helped us understand what's going on there and understand the planet we live on better. And another thing about putting things into perspective is that we started to view our own country in a bit of a different light. Because we always thought, oh my God, this place is horrible, nothing works here. But then we realized that it's not so bad. It could actually be much, much worse.
How did you end up in China? after all that?
Well, when I came back from Africa, I was working as a translator, and I had some friends who had already gone to China to teach English, and they told me it's really easy to find a job as an English teacher, and it's well paid, and like you should come and check it out. So I said, okay, I'll just go for a month and see if I like it. And yeah, well, it's been more than 5 years now.
Wow. So you're an English translator or an English teacher?
Now I'm a teacher. Yeah, mainly a teacher.
How do you like it?
You mean teaching or China?
Both, teaching and China.
Well, teaching is nice. It's a pretty rewarding job because you get to convey some knowledge to the people who really need it and who are going to use it. There is a craze about learning English in China. Everybody wants to learn English, so it's a pretty big market, and people are very driven. I think generally Chinese people are quite driven. They're very serious and they try very hard at whatever they're doing. As for the country, for me, what I like here is the variety. Like the variety of food or places you can visit or natural landscape or history, culture. It's very rich in that respect. Yeah, of course, there are some problems like cultural differences or miscommunication often because the language is very difficult to learn. But yeah, in general, I would say it's pretty enjoyable.
How many languages do you speak?
That's a difficult question because, where do you draw the line? I can communicate in many languages, some kind of basic conversation or like the survivor level. But I would say 4 or 5 are the ones that I can actually have a meaningful conversation in.
Nice. Do you still keep in touch with the other 2 authors?
Yeah, we do keep in touch regularly. One of them has stayed in Serbia and another one has gone to Spain where he started a family. Yeah, and I forgot to answer your previous question if we kept in touch with the people we met on the road, right?
Right.
So yeah, we do keep in touch with a lot of them, not with everyone, clearly, but with the younger ones, especially those who are on the internet. And I have to say that most of the protagonists of the book have left Africa in the meantime over the past 10 years. Most have immigrated to other countries.
Wow. That's amazing, isn't it?
It's interesting, right?
Right. So do you guys plan on doing another trip and meeting up? Or what's going on with the blog at this point?
I think it would be very difficult. I think you do something like that maybe only once in your lifetime. And now I'm already 40, so we have some other obligations. And one of my travel companions also has 2 kids, so I really can't see him hitchhiking around Kenya or Sudan again. It would be interesting to maybe at one point revisit some of the places just to see how they have changed, right?
Right. And because you've gained that knowledge, the ability to travel on your own, you can just go on your own now. In the future, do you feel like it gave you that confidence to be able to walk into a country and not knowing the language and customs to be able to learn it again and again?
Yeah, definitely. This is something I've done a lot in my life, actually. Just come to a country and then try to figure it out. And right now it's much easier, right? Because we have smartphones with a GPS and everything, and there are websites where you can book accommodation. But before, before all that, before smartphones, it was very difficult. You just arrive somewhere, and then you need to find out, like, where can I sleep, or where do I eat, or where's the bus station or the train station. Or it was I think more adventurous before. Now somehow it became almost easy, right?
I think it's a little easier, but I think the language when you switch countries is still one of those obstacles that you overcome. I think Google Translate, when it's working in other countries, helps a lot. But
it does.
It does. But I think that young people still can get that adventure travel and learning to handle things and be patient. Because when you're traveling, I think patience is something that you really learn, because things often go wrong and you just have to wait for the next bus, train, airplane, or keep moving on until you can get back to where you want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't plan for everything. But this is what makes it very exciting. This uncertainty and unpredictability. You don't know where you're going to be tomorrow, right? When you're at home, you always know what your next day is going to look like.
Definitely. And I thought that was the best part about the book, the unpredictability, the adventure of it all, the things that you ran into, the people that you met along the way, and the friendships that you developed. You guys did an outstanding job describing it. How long did it take you guys to write?
It took us about 5 years to write the book. And maybe that doesn't mean that the book is good. Maybe that just means that we really had no idea how to go about the business of writing a book. So we were learning as we went along. And in the end, when we reached something that we thought, okay, this is not too embarrassing, we said, okay, we can publish this.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing so much of the journey with us. Really excited to share it. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want a great book to read about, an amazing travel adventure, can you pronounce the name of the book for me?
Bantustan.
Bantustan. You won't be disappointed, and you'll enjoy the thrill of traveling.